Hello and welcome everybody on StrapiConf. My name is Mateusz Wojczal and I'm a CTO of Escola Soft, a software house, and Whelms, the world's first headless LMS. Today I want to show you some integration tests with Jest framework and of course how does it work together with Strapi. The agenda is that first of all we will have an introduction and some history of integration testing, unit testing with Strapi version 3 versus latest version 4. How we need some bootstrapping before we will write and run our tests. How does this work together with continuous integration? And what are the potential issues that we can come across. It's really great news for me that Strapi version 4 does work much better than the previous version in terms of integration test and Jest framework and any other testing framework. First of all, when the biggest changes are here on this in the table, and I'm showing just this in Jest test context. What are the changes, the differences? And first of all, the memory footprint is much slower in latest version. We can just run Strapi without like having huge machines, huge or expensive continuous integration, Docker images, resources, and etc. And so this is a huge improvement. Uh, Before that, in version 3, I wasn't able to run tests in separate context, just to run them. So you write a test in .test.js or .test.ts file, and the Jest runner is just picking all of those files and then running those tests separately. I came across really big trouble running those like they should in version 3. In version 4, it just works out of the box. And startup time is much quicker, and there's a really great function that wasn't possible in version 3, which is graceful shutdown. We are able to just shut down Strapi gracefully, so the runner does know that all of the tests, everything just is done, and we can stop testing. Before we can do any tests, writing tests, we need some bootstrapping, and by bootstrapping I mean just writing essential tools before we can write tests. So I'm calling those helpers, but it's not fortunate name. We can call it something else. But the idea is just to have some tools that are required to run tests and that are quite helpful to run tests. Those are just sets of straightforward functions used in every test file. So those are here are definitions of those helpers I wrote in TypeScripts. So they just basically show what they are doing. Most of them are just returning the promises that can be resolved by asking await. So wait for the server. It's self-explanatory what it does. Set up Strapi and stop Strapi. Those are essentials. You need to set up Strapi just to run the tests in your Strapi environment, and you should stop Strapi after those tests. The JWT helper just allows me to fetch the JSON Web Token for a particular user to send a endpoint authorization token. The grant privilege and grant privileges is a helper that allows me to set up what kind of privileges will be attached to particular endpoint method. It's essential because we are running tests on empty database, and it must be set to have the same effect like on the production. And the response has errors, just a helper that checks whether the response from the endpoint gives me the exact error I'm looking for. And there are some others that I think there is not much time that we can discuss. Here we see some implementation of those helpers, and basically it's very straightforward in latest version of Strapi. It's just for instance, the setup Strapi is just calling Strapi load and wait for server, which does create a Strapi server listen, and we run that because we don't want anything else to be running. We don't need any output from the terminal, anything like that. We want to run the Strapi smoothly, just to have the object to call the Strapi methods inside. What's nice, what's important here is that it's essential for tests to run on an empty database. So here on the stop Strapi, by default, Strapi is using SQLite database, which is stored in just in file. Here on stop Strapi, we are after all of the tests and gracefully shut down, we are deleting the file of SQLite database, which is the most straightforward way to clear up the database. The environment config. Strapi allows us to create environment config for node and global environment variable. When we run Strapi dev, this variable is set to development. On production, it's set to production, but Jest and most of the test runners is setting this value to test. This allows us to create a separate server config just for testing purposes. So here we set up a database for testing purposes. This is just the same. This is copy and paste from original file that comes with new Strapi, but here we are making sure that the test is not using the same SQLite database. And also here I'm just running some random number file that will be attached to the database file. And we can just disable some middlewares, so it will be the output of the test will be cleaner, and there will be smaller footprint, memory footprint, and like a launch footprint. So we don't need logger, so we can just disable logger. And here for plugins, this is really nice because here we can swap plugins. So here is example that I will be using mock node mailer to replace the original node mailer just for testing purposes. This will allow me to catch the emails that will be sent by my tests. And of course, the server requires some setting as well. Here we just add some keys that are required for the server to working fine with cryptography, with just setting the keys. Okay, the other thing is factories, because this is the previous settings were kind of essential. This is just like helper. It helps you testing. So the factory is just our small libraries to create the data we want to test. Here is the factory of user, and in this example we are generating random fake user with support of faker library. So it will give us a user with a random name, random email, and random last name, and so on and so on. Once we have those, everything is bootstrapped, we can write our first test. So we need to install some dependencies. Here I will just use 3 dependencies. The one is Jest, this is our test runner. Node mailer mock, as I mentioned, I want to test my emails. So I want to catch if the emails will be sent, and I want to see, I want to parse the mail content basically. And super test. So how we write tests. So my proposition is that we create a folder test, and then we can put test. The other approach is that we can put test as file with suffix .test.js next to the controllers. It's up to you. There's like this is an opinionated approach. Whatever approach you use, you have to create test in those files with the suffix test.js. All the tests must have before and after all. That will start and stop Strapi. And then the other thing that's essential, you have to run Jest in with the option run in band. So let me explain this. So because when you run Strapi, there's a lot of stuff is happening on the file system, and not just the database. So the tests cannot run in parallel. They have to run one by one. So this is the option that will run one test, and once it's finished, it will run in another one. It's not the default behavior of Jest. The Jest is trying to run as many tests as possible by thread, by having all of the possible threads from processor, from the operating system, but here it won't work. We have to run this with run in band. To test the controllers, we will use supertest, and this is library that basically it's a high-level abstraction of testing HTTP, and it's just using the built-in native node http.server object. Okay, so once we know this, we can write our first test. And here we will be testing the built-in implementation of Strapi authorization endpoint. So here we write that that the endpoint API auth local, when send identifier, which is username, and the password, should give us the JWT token, of course, if those credentials were valid. So here we see that I'm using this factory, which is called create user. And before test, I'm creating a user, putting him to the database. So I know he is there. As I mentioned, the database is empty before this. And I know this user exists. So, and the actual test just sends with the request, which is imported from supertest, is checking whether I'm getting the good response. Also, I can create some kind of end-to-end test with Jest runner. So here is a test that I'm running against the built-in auth controllers, which do the following. Stage 1, send the request to register a new user. Then it tests if the user exists in database and it's not confirmed. 3, the user should not be able to log in at this stage because the account is not confirmed. The confirmation email should be sent by that stage. I should fetch and test confirmation link from that email. Then I should be able to call the email confirmation endpoint with the code from email content, which should redirect with HTTP status 302. And then database user should be confirmed now. And last step is I should be able to log in now. I can also test stuff like building cron functions that Strapi provides. Here's an example. Just please note that this example is taken from Strapi version 3. There is one change. There is it's not many change. There are not many changes regarding the comparing the version 3 and 4, but there are some. So if you just copy and paste this in Strapi 4, it won't work. So please know that. I can test my custom filtering when I create some endpoint bespoke behavior. I can test files upload, which is great. So I can test whether the file uploads basically do what it's supposed to do. I can test whether the email templates were generated properly by checking the content of the email. I can test some custom validation of my models and so on. Okay, once we know we have those tests, it's nice to put them inside the continuous integration. And continuous integration with Jest is really easy. And it's if you use open source, it's for free. So I've integrated Strapi Jest with GitHub Actions, with GitLab GitLab runners, Jenkins, and other tools. I don't remember exactly. And here's an example of just YAML files from GitHub Actions, just that works out of the box. You can set code coverage, which will measure the degree of how much our code is covered by the tests. That's easy. Here we see the code service, and as a diagram and GitHub action example, just terminal output. That's how it works. Of course, there will be some issues, but the most critical issues were fixed in the latest Strapi version 4. So there are some things that would be nice to have in Strapi, and that is mocking and seeding. So there's no built-in mocking, and there's no built-in CD of dumbing data from a database. As I mentioned, there's no database cleanup or anything like Laravel database transaction. We can try with setting the next connection query with start transactions and rollback, but I haven't checked that. And there's no concurrency, so we have to run the test in the running band command. All of the examples I have shown are from my public GitHub repository, so you can test them on your own. You can get them. Here's a link. If you are interested more about tests, you can read the official Strapi documentation of Strapi unit testing. There's a little bit of misinformation. It's not unit testing, it's integration testing. But the blame is on me because I'm co-written this article. I also created some articles on Medium on my blog, which is just testing with GitLab CI, and more examples. And I really find this guide to unit testing in JavaScript repository on GitHub really great to read about the approach of testing, unit testing, integration testing, and basically testing in JavaScript, agnostic to the framework. And that will be all. Thank you. And my name is Mateusz. I'm a CTO. Here you can get in touch with me by going to my website, which is my name.mysurname.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn. And unfortunately, you won't be able to find me on any other social medias.